So Alex, this right here just folds up. If you can't figure it out, just fold it up and put it over there. Okay. Alright, and then
Okay.
And then
Is this already like doing it?
yeah, it's already recording. I had it start to go live at 1:25.
Okay, where's it gonna be at?
It's on YouTube, but I actually posted a link on Facebook. Yeah. Pretty good.
So, whose recording is that? Wait, who's sound? Oh, it's just something we plug up until we get started. Oh, no, it's not. Come on. Yeah. I'm gonna go with rock.
I'm right here. Oh, I'm sorry.
I purposely do that like when I'm in a class, and I see people sitting in the same chair.
Yeah.
I'm gonna purposely. Yeah, I've had people say, excuse me. Yeah? Oh, it's my chair. Well, I'm gonna use it today. Right. Exactly. Put it in there just the right time. Oh, you got, oh yeah, let me see. Give it to me. You know, I can get it right. Oh my goodness. Why we not doing the tail? He is. Oh, my goodness. all day. No, they're early. Let's see what's going on today. Near doing.
Something's in the water free, right? That's not how that went? Okay.
Oh, no, not those.
We're live, did you see it?
We're live.
You see Facebook, we're live.
We're live on YouTube. I'm watching right now. Playing with my toy. She put it in on time. Yes, she did.
Hey, Kalita.
Hey, so neat. Oh, please, you look like you're still in elementary school. Okay. That's good to know. How your temporaries. For the rest. Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Okay, I love you. Thanks so much. You got it.
I'll check it out.
It's posted on Facebook, but it's on YouTube though.
Now, next time, is it possible to like set up a link for it that we can email out a link to like? Okay.
You want to take the look at it?
I'm good. The other people upstairs are happy with it.
If you can't figure out how to get this off,
That probably would be a problem.
Just
So
leave
we'll
it.
Be like that, set up in my office.
okay.
Yeah.
They sleep better when you let them run.
I'm gonna run some more. We'll get through.
These long hallways we watch.
Oh yeah, that's what we're gonna do right now.
My technique, take them to school, work late, let them run up and down the hallway and make them go. They love you.
go over to his house and say good morning.
All I can say is I understood. I knew that if I could guess which one of you there was, I was in the contract. You know, they can always call home. And I'll be there. That's the one number, my mother called. I left my phone out of battery in the last 2 years, and I couldn't remember anybody's telephone number but my mother. Unfortunately, she did answer the phone, and she was able to carry out my instructions to call to go ahead and tell her. Yeah, no. See, you can't win the summer block because they're everywhere. That's what I did. I haven't gotten any yet. I just blocked it. I'm ready for that.
That's so good.
My intellect is on my phone. Computer intelligence. No, I don't have a cell phone. I don't have a phone.
You're younger than the younger ones. Well, I think
nobody coming out here. Won't be even a good shot coming this way. Landlines, they block everybody down. I can go out there to an appointment, and I heard the press boom. All right? I'm just going to have this the dentist office, the meeting was on, so they canceled everything. So I had to turn around and go right back and try to call the school saying, you know, put everybody on the phone. Fortunately, now, Eastern Avenue
Avenue block in standard traffic. But I used all the back roads, and I went and bought all the chickens at the Kentucky Fried Chicken place on Denver Road, like the right car. Okay. I bought all they had, right? Put it in my car. Then wiggled my way back to Easton. Bought had the staff bring the chicken because there was only people there a long time. And they hadn't gotten out of space to lunch. So there was food and time. Enough people. So the parents came and got the children. We got all the children that were leaving with me. But the ones who, shall we say, made an adult decision, we checked on them. We had a teacher roster. So we were better prepared for other things, but in preparation for other things, we were okay. And Frederick, I think his name was Frederick and Gilchrist set it up. And when I got there, everything was under control. And the appointment for the dentist was yesterday. But the staff had done it. But when I brought the chicken, you should have seen that they were hungry because everybody had to go to work. What they did was they took our cameras and the cameras were panning all up and down East Avenue. We could see all the way out to the other side. We got all the way out. And so they took the cameras and they locked them on the track. Track. Yeah.
Good afternoon, all. We're calling this meeting to order. We just wanted to welcome everyone to this Saturday UDCNAS and the UDC Alumni Affairs Association meeting. I think that it would be wonderful if everyone could just introduce themselves. So we can start from the left, the front row, and the right row.
William Calbrew.
Good afternoon, everyone. Cookie Board for class of 0709.
I'm Alice Washington, Director of Alumni Affairs, class of 2019 soon to be.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mildred Musgrove, class of 1970, DC Teachers College.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian James. I'm class of 2000.
Hi, I'm Michael Burma, class of 2016. I started here a long time. That's a long story.
Well, I went around and introduced myself. So I'm Valerie Grant, class of 1978 and 1991.
Jerome Shelton, class of 1971.
And I'm Betty Ensminger, class of 2018. So welcome, everyone. Hopefully you all feel welcome and you're going to have an amazing experience. So welcome this Saturday afternoon. And the meeting is called to order.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I also want to extend a quick hello to everyone who might be viewing us online. So sad you aren't able to join us in person, but we hope to see you in the future. All right, just a quick preview of our agenda for those folks online. We are going to do an Office of Alumni Affairs update, pro bono council update, bylaw revision process. I'm going to talk in greater detail about that. Mr. Jerome Shelton in a few more minutes is going to come up and talk about elections, and then we're going to go over some of our upcoming events, and we'll wrap it all up. Excuse me, so very briefly, just an update from the Office of Alumni Affairs. First, I want to let you guys know about Equity Imperative 2.0. So does anyone or is anyone in the room familiar with the Equity Imperative also known as a strategic plan for the university. Have you heard the term before?
Yes.
Okay, good. President Mason will like that. So one of the handouts that you got today is a one-pager on the campaign with some updated statistics and information about what we're working to accomplish here. As you know, UDC, we are really focused in now on creating pathways to the middle class for our students. And so what will be upcoming this year, starting next month in February, are budget hearings. So a lot like last year, we're going to be encouraging people to go out to the budget hearings that are being around the city hosted, of course, by Mayor Bowser and her team, as an opportunity to help us continue to lobby for lack of a better way to describe, additional funding for UDC as we continue to try to grow the university and do more things and bring more opportunities to our students. So more information about that will be coming. Again, that will though begin to kick off next month as those forum dates and locations are announced. Another thing that will be coming out of my office is a strategic plan. So now that we have the equity imperative, I will be building a strategic plan centered around the idea of lifelong learners. So we're going to be looking at some partnerships with career services. We're also going to be looking at what will be sort of a fireside chat series that will cover different topics, maybe in public, or excuse me, current events, or different topics in careers. Maybe it's transitioning from the workforce back into school or from school back into the workforce. So those are going to be some things that will be coming. I will be working with the leadership of the society to see how and where we can begin to work together to bring forth some of that programming to all of you. So again, more to come on that. A couple of very specific alumni events that may or may not be on your calendar. We will be launching a Spring Week of Giving campaign in March. We will also be bringing back the Golden Jubilee. This celebrates the 50th reunion class. This is the 50th class reunion event. That will be on May 4th this year. We will host a career services training in October, and then homecoming, of course, is going to be again in November. I'm hoping that we will be able to finalize the date so everyone can start marking their calendar by March, because we really want to start at least letting people know when the dates are, and then obviously over the summer we'll start pushing out more about events. Are there any questions? Awesome, all right. With that, I'm going to let Mr. Grayson come up here and talk to you all a little bit more.
Thank you, Alex. Before we get to pro bono counsel and the updates we have about the legal health of the society, I wanted to talk quickly about membership. As everyone has been talking in the past, we had suspended membership for about, I'd say, roughly 6 months. We've been advised by legal counsel that it is okay at this time to accept all applications for membership, both annual members, which is a $50 assessment, and our lifetime membership, which is an assessment of $250 for its entirety. That's for all of our active members or previously inactive members and our inactive members as well. As you know, we have 41,000 firebirds all throughout the United States and globally. We are opening it up to each and every one of you to come back to Firebird Nation and be a part of all of the greatness that we have in store for you coming in the very near future. If you have any questions, please call the Alumni Affairs Office, or you can send us an email at UDCNAS.edu. It's been a great undertaking since last year to get things back on track with the society. We've had to undertake pro bono counsel with Skadden, Arps, Slate, McGeer, and Flum, LLP. They are located here in Washington, D.C. and internationally. They're a very large law firm, and they've taken the time out of their busy schedules to give us their services at cost. We've been able to review everything with them as far as getting our bylaws legally updated, our DC revocation status put back into approval. That happened this week. We're also working on we've also begun the process of reinstating with the IRS for our 501c3 status. That's in the works as well. We've worked tirelessly to be able to get us back on track to where we are now. That's the biggest part of the update. What did you want to add in regards to where we are, or do you want to allow them to ask questions about our program council? Michelle Wimbledon, the lady at the bottom, she's our lead counsel. She has given us many, many hours and great advice on where we are now.
Michelle, if you're out there online, we love you and appreciate you. There is no way we could have done this without them. Yes, so the one quick thing that I want to mention, I'm sorry, because it's easier for me to hold. The one quick thing is there does say assign a new temporary registered agent. This is because once we go through an election and having a new board of directors, I'll talk about that in a little bit, we're going to be switching that over to reflect those new governance groups. So we want to make sure that's why everything right now is sort of temporary, but we didn't see any value to continue waiting to file our paperwork because we can swap the names out of who's listed there. But essentially what the registered agent is, for any of you who don't know, we are required by law within the District of Columbia to have someone on record who can say receive mail on behalf of the organization. We are required to have someone who, if there are ever questions, comments, concerns by the city, they have one specific point of contact. So that, again, that's a requirement by law. So we went ahead and selected, it is me. And that, again, is just a very temporary thing. So the minute we vote in new officers on or about, April the 10th, and I say on or about, that's just because with an election on March the 30th, there are 10 days, obviously, to contest the election. So seeing as there no one does contest the election, then those officers would be it, and amongst them, we would choose then a registered agent, just so that everyone is clear on that. An MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, these are two documents that have been necessary for a number of years, but the main objective is they clearly define and articulate the relationship between the UDCNAS, so the Alumni Society, and one, the university, and then two, the University Foundation. Again, this is important because when we start getting into things like fundraising, well, the UDC Foundation is the fundraising arm of the university, and so we just want to make sure that we have very clear lines and boundaries between what they're able to do, what we're able to do, how we're able to approach donors, because the society will begin again to actively fundraise, and so we just want to make sure that all of our, all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed there. Kind of the same thing on the university side. Now, we do currently have the DCMR and the DC Code, which gives obviously a lot of information about how the organization should be structured, how the organization should be run, but that document, as long as it is still very, very limited. And a lot of the language in it is still kind of vague, or it speaks greatly about an initial period, which our attorneys have essentially said we are out of that initial period now. So with that, we need to come back and have a very clear understanding of our relationship to the university. So that's the need for those documents. We will hopefully begin work on them this summer. Again, there was a goal there to make sure that we had voted in new governance, so that's something that they will be working on kind of almost as soon as they come into office. There is some conversation also about at some point addressing some of the issues within the DCMR, but that is a much, much longer process, and that is because you are effectively changing what is, again, for lack of a better way to describe DC law, and that definitely will include a lot more input and a lot more conversation with the university to change that document. So we felt like it was more important to prioritize an MOU because that's something that we can fairly quickly put into place. Quickly still being roughly probably 6 months or so to get something like that drawn up. It does have to go to our board of trustees, et cetera, to be approved. But we're going to be clarifying some of that. So any questions about those two things?
writing a check, should they write it to the alumni association or to the foundation?
Great question. So someone asked if someone is writing a check, should they write it to the Alumni Society or should they write it to the foundation? The Alumni Society will begin accepting gifts. We will begin accepting gifts. However, one of the things we are going to be working on is a statement that does address the fact that gifts made currently are not tax deductible. And that is because right now, we do not have 501c3 status. So we are allowed by law to continue collecting gifts, but they just won't be tax deductible. So our attorneys are coming up with just a very brief statement that will go on our membership application as well as donation forms. So anytime someone makes a gift, they'll know that it just, unfortunately at this time, is not tax deductible. Now, one of the things to address with 501c3 status is that we are going to be applying as a new organization. Now, that does not mean that we are doing anything kind of behind the scenes and recreating the organization. It's just simply for IRS purposes, it will appear as though we are applying for 501c3 status for the very first time. That is because in order to apply for official reinstatement, you have to go back and create what's called a Performa 990 for every single year that you did not file. There is a major concern that we don't have enough documentation to appropriately fill out those forms. And especially now with the government shutdown, which, yay, it's open. So I hope if we have any federal government employees, I hope that you're back to work and getting paid. But because of the shutdown, it is probably going to take around a year to get back the 501c3 status. And that's based on the IRS. That's not based on us being able to get the paperwork and stuff done and filed. That is the IRS that our attorneys have told us, and working with some other clients on some similar things. It may take about a year before we get that back, which is why we're having the statement and all of those different things made. But again, it's making sure that we're following the best policies and procedures to get these things back up and running appropriately so that we never have to address an issue like this again. But that is why we're still kind of in limbo, is because there was a concern about being able to fill out some of that old documentation. And so that's why effectively on paper, it will look as though we are applying as a new organization. Did I answer your question completely?
It did, but the other part of the question is, who should the checks be written to, the alumni or for the foundation?
Yes, so I apologize. So yes, very clearly, yes, the checks can be made out to the UDCNAS or the University of the District of Columbia National Alumni Society. So either one, but UDCNAS is good, but please do make sure. Also, when you do make out your check, as we prepare to go live with membership applications, please ensure that in the memo section of your check, you do indicate if you are paying dues. Otherwise, your gift will simply be counted as just a gift and kind of a donation. Now, obviously, if it comes in attached to an application, we will assume, but sometimes, you come to an event like this, you take an application and then you mail in your check later. So just always ensure that you're writing in the memo section that it is for dues, all right? Any other questions? No? Okay. Did we talk about the membership list?
Not the way you want it. So what I did forget was that we're going to start it and the deadline is February 16th, not 7th.
Okay. So the membership list, so we talked about the fact that we are still working to get some of those membership lists. If they come out, so what we're looking at trying to do is post them online. I do know that we have some members that we would need to make other accommodations for because they may not have computer access. But if you feel like you are a member, you will need to ensure that we know that, because our records may or may not indicate that. So outside of the list that we do currently have, we are effectively, everybody is starting over as a member. Obviously, if we have you listed as a lifetime member, that will be honored. But again, if you are not on the membership list that we have, there will be quite a bit of onus on you to somehow prove that membership status. You can do that with, if you still have potentially a copy of a check, if you have your lifetime membership pin, but just something that would indicate to us that you were previously a member of the organization. the membership deadline will be March the 15th, and that's only in an effort to make sure that our records are correct to be able to give you a ballot to vote in the election. And that is, again, because we will be moving from, so one of the things, and I'll talk about this a little bit more as well when we get into the bylaws, is one of the things that we've decided is that all of our meetings will be open to all alum, and we will continue to live stream it because it's an awesome way to get folks who may not live locally engaged and keeping them up to date on what's going on. And then when it is necessary, we will obviously have closed sessions to discuss business for the organization. And in those closed sessions, obviously, only members would be allowed to attend those sessions. So with that, obviously, an election would be a closed meeting. So that meeting would not be live streamed. And that's because that's a closed meeting only for members. If we do get to a point, which I'm quite sure we will, having members who are abroad perhaps, we will provide private links for them to be able to view it on YouTube. So it would be a situation of the only way you would be able to view it is if you received an email with that link in it to watch. Because again, we want to make sure that those meetings are closed and private to non-members. But again, remember, March the 15th, all of this is going to go on the web, but March the 15th will be the last day to complete a membership application. We will also need to ensure that we have your dues by March the 15th, because that is what counts you as an active member. So I understand that that date is coming up fairly quickly, but please let us know if there are any concerns there. But we do need to ensure that we have accurate list in order to move forward with the vote.
So the membership list that you currently have is a list of people from whom you receive.
Yes.
And
So,
you publish that.
yes. So the membership list, our question was, the membership list that we do have are people that we have received dues from. Yes. Again, what we will likely be publishing will be a list of lifetime members to be honored, and then folks who in the last year have paid dues. Because again, recall, if you were just an annual member and you paid dues 2 years ago, well, you would owe dues again anyway. So we would not be publishing that portion of the list. So it will be posted lifetime members and then any persons who have in the last year paid dues. Again, I'll talk about this a little bit more, but we're also going to start a firm cutoff for when you're able to join the organization moving forward, again, in an effort to make sure that our elections are kind of clean. So what we don't want to ever run into, and not that anyone would do this, but you have to prepare for it, is we have an election on April the 1st, and so on March the 28th, we got 53 new applications. Nah, we're going to kind of prevent that from happening because we don't want, for lack of a better way to explain, we don't want people trying to stack an election like that. That's unfair. But this year, obviously, we're making an exception. So that'll be a conversation for our board of directors next year to kind of make those very clean, very, very specific regulations. But that is something that is slightly addressed in the bylaws, is that there is going to be a cutoff. So when you're able to join and then post-election, we will obviously resume open applications for people to be able to join. So I know I went beyond, but did I fully answer your question? Any other questions? No? Okay. Alrighty, guys. Now get ready to get into the meat and potatoes with these bylaws. So, if you have questions, please stop me. But before I start, what I'm going to ask is slide by slide, I have very specific sections of the bylaws covered. So I'll quickly show you the next one. So this is membership. What's listed here are all of the different sections in the membership section of your bylaws. This is what we're going to review today because this is where the bulk of the changes have been made. So we ask that we keep the conversation, unless it's something really pressing, to what we review. Again, we want to try to move through this timely, not quickly, timely. So please stop me, but I'm going to ask that you let me review it, then we'll take questions, and then we'll move on to the next section. Quickly though, I'm going to back up. So the bylaws are live online. They will be available until February the 10th for comment. Now, they did go live on January the 10th, and we did try to push that out via email. So we wanted to host this meeting as an opportunity to kind of have an open forum to be able to discuss them. But February the 10th is when they will come off of the website. That is because the next step is they will be reviewed by our Board of Trustees Academic and Student Affairs Committee. That committee meets on February the 13th. So the reason we cut it off is because we need to be able to collect all of those comments, and all of that will go to the Board of Trustees for review. Prior to that, we're going to have one last special meeting with our attorneys just to make sure that any comments or suggestions aren't against the law. So for example, we had a situation in there where I said it was 10 members that needed to be able to call a meeting. By law, it's 10%. So different things like that. You know, we have to ensure that what we're doing is legal based on the DC Nonprofit Code. So it will go just briefly to our attorneys. They'll just review, yep, that's good, yep, that's good, yep, that's good, and then it will all go to the Board of Trustees for review. Now, this group will vote on them on March the 30th. It is possible, based on what type of comments come back or how many comments come back, that we will have another special meeting to re-review the bylaws. But the minute they come back from the Board of Trustees, seeing as there is no further issues, they will go back online for you to be able to review. But again, unless we've just received so many comments, they will not reopen for comment. It'll kind of, that will be the final document. So this is again sort of a last pitch and opportunity to have any questions or express any concerns with the bylaws. Final review will happen by the Board of Trustees at a later date. That's just simply because if, God forbid, the bylaws are not approved by vote on March the 30th, then we will have to come back and create a new timeline to bring them back to the body and address, you know, what are the concerns. All right, so that's why right now it says TBD for the final review by the larger Board of Trustees, not just the committee. Any questions about that? Now you see there also a sample. Each one of you should have been able to pick up today. These are also online, so if you have, you know, tons of comments and you need more of these, you can absolutely go and print them. You can steal as many of those copies that are out on the table as you would like. Again, just take care to please use this form. If you have questions, don't hesitate to contact myself or email to Bernard at the UDCNAS email address, because we want to definitely gather your comments, but we do need them in this form because this makes it much, much easier for us to be able to read them. And what we're going to do is, let's say everyone has here section 2.3. We'll be able to say how many people, it's kind of in an Excel spreadsheet, how many people had comments about that particular section and address them all at once. So that's why we need you to use this form, because it just makes it a lot easier for us to be able to address your comments and concerns. Any questions about that? No?
That form is online.
Yes, this form is online. So there was a refresh to the UDC webpage. I hope you all have seen it. It looks very, very nice. Which is why, so there are going to be some updates to that bylaw review page. One of the things is we do have an official memo from our attorneys that kind of talk about some of the things we very briefly went over that will be posted to the website. But because of the refresh, we were not allowed to post new content to the website. So we got a little bit delayed in being able to update the page the way we had built the timeline, because it was like, you know, we love you, Jay, but she was like, you can't do it right now. We had to wait. So I'm hoping that by Monday morning, or excuse me, by Monday afternoon, we'll be able to get all of that updated. But this form and the bylaws are there. I will tell you, the bylaws that you have in your hand today have been updated again by our attorneys based on some feedback that we have already gotten. So there will be a refresh copy on the website. But what you have is the most updated version that we have right now. Okay? So again, we're trying to address this as stuff comes in, okay? Any other questions about the form? No? Alrighty. So, membership. One of the biggest changes here is that we have made some changes to our membership categories. We will now have active members, lifetime members, and emeritus membership. Emeritus membership is the newest one, so I'll talk about that one very quickly. Essentially what we felt is that we have a number of alum who are a bit more seasoned. We have a number of young ladies who attend the meetings and are very, very active in the organization, and so we wanted to begin to grant a membership status for folks who may now be on a fixed income and may not be able to continue perhaps affording to pay their annual dues. Now, they will be required to serve at least one active year, and then after that, their dues will be waived. So seeing as they meet all the rest of the requirements for active membership, they will also be given the right to vote. So we thought that that was something very, very important to include moving forward. Lifetime members are, again, moving forward. So now we will honor everyone who has already been a lifetime member. But moving forward, lifetime members will be those who have completed one active year and met their financial obligation, whatever that financial obligation is. Right now, lifetime membership dues are $250. It will be conferred by a majority vote of the board of directors taken at the next regular meeting after you reach eligibility. Again, that's essentially saying that the board of directors will basically go through a review and make sure that you've met your eligibility, and they'll give you, okay, yes, Betty, you have done everything you are supposed to do. You can be a lifetime member. A lifetime member is in good standing only when that member is not delinquent in the fulfillment of their financial obligations. So again, this means lifetime members will have an opportunity to pledge out their gifts. However, your lifetime membership status does not go active until you have fulfilled the financial obligation. So if you decide today, I'm going to be a lifetime member and I'm going to start out with just giving you $100, you do not start immediately receiving lifetime membership benefits until you fulfill the full $250 requirement. Pursuant to the rules of active memberships, lifetime members may not hold a position as a member of the board of directors unless they complete all requirements for good standing as outlined in section 2, active members. So again, we're going to review active membership last just because I want to make sure we're very, very clear on all the different pieces now, because we're requiring folks to be active and engaged members now. So therefore, lifetime members are not automatically members in the term that is used in the DC Nonprofit Corporation Act. Now, basically what this is saying is that in order to be an active member, you are going to be required to come to meetings. You will be asked to attend events. You will be asked to volunteer at events. That is effectively how you maintain the biggest privilege as members, obviously, is your voting rights. Now, there will be member benefits and things that we will begin rolling out. For example, we're going to be signing a contract with Perks program, which provides all sorts of discounts on different tickets to restaurants or to Disney World even, hotels, things like that. So we're going to be rolling that out. So as a lifetime member, once you pay your dues, you would forever have access to those benefits. But if you are not actively engaged in the organization, you will not continue to have an opportunity to vote. Is that clear to everyone?
Oh, I want to add to that.
Yes.
Life membership, you have some elders that are very involved in this program. They can't be at every event. And they pay their life membership dues.
Yes.
Now, are they given any kind of exemption from participating in meetings and other activities? Because some of them cannot get it.
That will be something that once these bylaws are approved would go to the board of directors. I would reserve that right now for the board of directors. So the question was, there are some members, elderly members, who may or may not be able to physically be at meetings and things like that, and would they still have an opportunity to vote? I'm going to table that right now and say that I believe that should be a board of directors decision to make once we elect them in. Because again, the goal here is to make sure that they're actively engaged. So one thing that I might proffer is to say that if you are not actively coming to meetings, or if you're not actively engaged in coming to some of our events, would you even know who to vote on perhaps? Because you may not know the folks who are running for the different positions, but we certainly don't want to put them in a situation where they're physically unable to come to a meeting, and so we're basically saying to them, well, thank you so much, but you just don't get an opportunity to vote. So again, for now, we're just gonna table that conversation. It's something that the board of directors would be able to make a decision on. But please, that's something to address here in your comments. Please make note of that. And then also, we would ask that you maybe offer a solution or a potential change to that. How can we accommodate for those folks? You know, do they need to kind of maybe submit written notice so that we accurately know who they are? Things like that. So please, again, definitely address that here. All right, active members. Active members are those who have met the eligibility requirements established in Section 1 for eligibility. An active member in good standing has the privilege of voting. Active members are also eligible to hold any position as a member of the board of directors, as an elected or appointed officer, and as a committee chair to maintain good standing. An active member shall be required to, 1, meet all financial obligations, to include payment of regular dues when imposed an amount set by the board of directors as outlined in attachment A, dues. Now, let me quickly address attachment because you're going to see quite a few of those in the bylaws. The attachments will be addressed by committees that we're going to be begin soliciting for to help write some of this. So for example, there will be a membership policy that we will be asking you all as members to come together and help write. And then that would go back to the board of directors to be approved. But we do want some membership input. So when we start getting into the very, very specific details, obviously some of that is outlined in the bylaws because it has to be. When we start getting into the real specific details of some of this, we want your input absolutely in writing those full documents.
And those documents will then become attachments to?
Yes, they will become attachments to the bylaws, but the way it was explained by our counsel is that because they are attachments, the board of directors will have an opportunity to change them as they see fit. So if the board of directors, for example, just an easy one, if the board of directors wanted to say we want to change dues, how much dues are, it's already in the bylaws that members will be required to pay dues. But the board of directors will have an opportunity to change how much dues are, and it does not have to go for a vote if the board of directors chooses. So just to be clear on that, if the board of directors says we're just going to up the dues by 10%, it does not have to go for a vote. Okay? Number 2, perform satisfactory volunteer service to satisfy requirements outlined by the membership committee and its published guidelines. So again, that's where we start talking about getting into some of those very, very specific details, is that what are going to be those volunteer requirements, and we're going to let the committee decide what that is. Consistently support UDCNAS sponsored and hosted events, including through regular attendance, assistance, and positive promotion of all events within guidelines set by the membership committee. And attend at a minimum 2 quarterly UDCNAS regular meetings within the organization's fiscal year. So that is between October the 1st and September the 30th. If you ask why, that is because that is the university's fiscal year. So that's why that's our year as well. All right, any additional questions about membership before I move on to the next section?
Just Americans. It's the last sentence, certain rules for active membership and active members do not have voting rights.
So they will have voting rights. Okay, that's an edit that I thought I made. So if they meet all the requirements of active membership, essentially if they're an active member, post 75, they just don't have to pay dues anymore. So if they're electing to have been an active member and they never joined as a lifetime member. But I will make a note of that because that should have been updated in there. Anyway. Anything else?
If someone wanted to join today and pay their membership, can you do that out there as a form out there, or you have to do it online?
So the membership application will go online. online, and that is just because on the membership application, it will give you some information about eligibility. One of the things that is in the bylaws, but that we're not gonna go over today, is that we did create an additional section for eligibility, and that is for affiliates. So those are people who may not necessarily be alum of the university, for example, faculty, staff, etc. And so we weren't able to, essentially our council came to us and said, we really think you need to do this because the way that it's written right now, the only people who could join are alum. And we knew that we wanted to be an open organization, and so the language came back to us too late. So it's in the bylaws, but we just didn't get to update the application as quickly. So that will be online. Again, if you do not have computer access and you need a paper copy of the application, let me know and I will make sure you get it, okay?
Last one.
No.
In terms of membership, is there anywhere online, like, fault me for not going there, where you say, this organization is for, and name the other institutions, because for some reason, some people are just confused about that, and I don't understand confusion.
So the question was, is it on, and I'm sorry, the first question was, where's the membership application? That will be online. The second question that was just asked is, will it be online explaining who is eligible? Yes, it is coming. It is absolutely coming. So we're going to be doing a refresh of the UDCNAS page. So if you go right now, the udc.edu/alumni has a totally different look and feel. And if you click there and it says UDCNAS, it still has the old look. That's going to be updated as well to have the same look, and that's where some of that language will be to make it clear. Yes, yes. Because we want our predecessor institutions especially to know that they are absolutely welcome in this organization. But we're also beginning to look at faculty and staff who may be interested in joining, as well as students who may be interested in joining. So we're going to make that very, very clear. And it's going to also be on the application to explicitly say, this is who is eligible to join this organization. Anything else? All right, moving on. Governance. Now, this is something that we're going to talk a little bit more too about once we get to the election. By law, we are required to have a board of directors. This was something that was new to me because I'm not from DC, but DC does require a board of directors. In addition to officers, we are also required by law to have at a minimum 3 board of directors, a president, and a treasurer. So, first with governance, we will have 6 elected board of directors, 6 board of directors, to include myself. So per the DCMR, I am an ex officio member of the board of directors for the organization. So again, ex officio meaning I do not get a vote. So 3 of those board of directors will be essentially board of directors at large. The last 2 will be the president and the treasurer. So automatically, the president and the treasurer will have seats as board of directors. Our first election, we will only vote in those 3 at-large board of directors. We will have a second election to vote in officers. Now, we did this because by law, actually, our board of directors could appoint who they wanted to be officers. But we felt like our membership would obviously really want to be able to elect their own officers. And so what we've done as a caveat is there will be an interview process that anyone, so if you run for, say, Vice President of Special Events, you will be interviewed by the board of directors to ensure that, you know, if there are any, so for example, for, we are calling it now Vice President of Finance and Audit, I believe is a position. And that's just because they will assume all of the, by law, rules of a treasurer, but there will be some additional duties as far as completing an audit for the organization, things like that. And so they'll go through an interview with the board of directors to ensure that they've got some level of skill set to be able to complete the job. So that's that, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. We are also going to have an opportunity for a board observer. So this would be another non-voting person on the board of directors. This is the trustees of UDC may appoint an observer. Now, this gets into, historically the organization's board of directors were the university's trustees. Typically, they were those 3 elected alumni trustees. Now, the reason we did this is because we felt like it was important to sort of have kind of that separation of church and state, and that this organization can and should elect its own board of directors that would govern this organization, because when the trustees are elected, they are elected to govern the university. So be clear on that. When you elect them to govern the university. And it was just kind of assumed, based on the way the DCMR was written, that those people would almost automatically just be the board of directors for this organization. So we've kind of made that clear. Now, let me be clear. If I decide today, now obviously this is not going to ever happen, but if I decided today that I wanted to run for a board of directors as a UDCNAS, I can also separately run as a board of trustee member for the university. And I could be elected for both. But it would be 2 separate elections now. So we wouldn't be waiting to see who got elected as a board of trustee, and then they would come over and automatically be one of the organization's board of directors. But we will still, because that was something that was happening, we will still honor the trustees and say, if you would like to elect an observer to come and be a part of our board of directors meetings and sort of process, we will absolutely make an opening for that, but they would be a non-voting member of that board of directors. Now, any alumni board of trustee member will also still have an option to join and be an active member of this organization. They just wouldn't be a board of director. Is that clear on what and kind of why that's in here? All right. And then again, board duties, this is fairly simple. It shall be the duty of the board of directors to conduct all business on behalf of the organization. They shall have the authority to vote on and decide all matters not otherwise reserved to the members by these bylaws or the UDCNAS Articles of Incorporation. Now, just a second quick note, one of the other things that we're going to begin doing is creating an archive. So all of the official documentation of the organization, including our Articles of Incorporation, the DCMR, etc., will be available to you on the website so that you can quickly go and look at them if you're ever interested. I think it's important to know what they say because that's typically where a lot of this kind of trickles down from, but we are going to make them readily accessible now on the website so that you can at least go in and read them. Any questions before I go on? All right, so this says a lot. I'm going to move through this piece very, very quickly. This is removal from office and resignation. So again, this is just where again some fairly large changes have been made. And this is addressing some things that we've had as a part of the history of this organization. So the first is removal based on attendance. What that basically says is if you miss so many consecutive meetings, you will automatically be removed from your position. That's pretty much what it says. You will automatically be removed from your position. So it doesn't matter, even as a board of director, if you miss 3 consecutive board meetings without adequate excuse. Now, obviously there's adequate excuse. If you are ill, if you are suffering from a serious illness and physically cannot make it to the meeting, obviously an exception would be made. But we want to make it clear that attendance is important and you will be removed if you do not come to the meetings. Vote of no confidence. Now, obviously by law, we are required to let our members vote out officers if they so choose. This here essentially walks you through the process of doing that, okay? So it's not trying to take away from your ability to do it. This is just putting a bit more of a formal process in place on how to do it. So for example, so many members have to sign a position because we never want to find ourselves in a situation where I just decided I don't like Betty and so I'm going to issue a vote of no confidence and then hope that at the meeting there is now a formal process. It also includes saying that it would come to me. That's for board of directors, and that's just to also keep a level of confidence in who may be submitting it. okay? Because we don't want to out somebody potentially if they would really like to remove an officer. We don't want anyone in that situation where they feel like they can't do it. You know, it may be one of your fellow board of directors and you guys are friends, but you're kind of like, in this position they are just not really doing a good job, and I know that, and I've tried to check them, but it's not working. So now you can kind of in confidence move through this process, and you would never be outed as the person who issued it. And then resignation from office. Again, this is just effectively saying that if you do resign from office, that resignation would stand. We are going to address at a later date, again, as a board of directors decision on a process by which if someone is resigned or removed from office, how to replace them. What has been discussed with council and what they have encouraged us is to say that effectively one of those board of directors would serve temporarily in that position until another election, especially when you think about, you know, if someone resigns from office halfway through, then that may say, okay, well, that might now make a case potentially that we just simply need to host a special election to put someone back into that position, especially knowing that we serve 2-year terms. So that, again, that's also a change. Instead of 4-year terms, there are 2-year terms now with the option to serve consecutively. Any questions? No? Yes?
Are there any, altering or stagnated ones in the?
Yes, so there is a level of stagnation in that board of directors will come into office in April and will serve until the following April. Officers will be elected in June, but they will not officially take office until the beginning of the fiscal year. So they would begin service in October and serve until the following September. Now, the reason for that is 2 things. One, to help make sure that we're always covered with some level of governance, so that hopefully we never ever have a situation where there are holes in governance. You know, everybody's term comes to an end at the same time and then you just have no one. But also, because that gives an opportunity for the board of directors, once they're newly elected into office, to set up some of their own process, protocols, procedures if they want to make changes to anything. And it gives an opportunity for planning with your new officers. So you would have a new board of directors come in essentially, and then you would have new officers. And so that gives them an opportunity to plan over the summer and prepare for the new fiscal year before it begins. So you would have officers finishing out a term and new officers already working so that they can hit the ground running in October. So that's kind of the goal there. So again, board of directors would be April to April. Officers are October to September, and that's just because officers have a hard October 1st start date, and then September 30th versus your board of directors are elected in April, but because of the way you can contest the vote, etc. So that's why they're April to April. Questions? We are rolling. All right, officers and duties. Now, what you see here is an extremely condensed version of what is actually in the bylaw. So I encourage you to read through the very specifics of some of those duties. So for example, you see that the president has both operations and fiduciary responsibilities there. We've also, again, made a couple of changes to some of the past officer positions because one of the things that we wanted to do was move away from having what was originally roughly 21 officers. That is the original bylaws, there were 21 officers, yes. And move much more into committees. So the committees, there will be committees for each one of these officers. Some of them will have 2 committees. And that's just because we want to, again, we really want to make sure that the membership at large is engaged in the organization and everything isn't being done always at the top level. Because then too, you also walk away with a very exhausted leadership. And that's not what we want to do. And so, very quickly, I'm not going to read this, so I'm going to give you guys a minute while I'm kind of just going through and naming the positions. The president, I feel like that's fairly obvious. Again, I've already talked about the vice president of finance. So this was a change, and again, this is just an effort to make sure that all the duties of not just a treasurer are being followed, but there are some additional requirements as far as being able to conduct an audit of the organization, things like that. We also have a new position, Vice President of Records and Compliance. This is to ensure that things like our DC incorporation status never ever again slips through the cracks, because now there is an officer that is their sole responsibility, is to consistently ensure that all of our documentation with the government is up to status as it should be. They will also sort of serve as the historian and archivist of the organization, so they'll be responsible for collecting and distributing meeting minutes. Again, so everything that goes to record keeping will be on this group, except keeping membership records. That will be on the next position, or excuse me, the very last position, the Vice President of Membership. This group will effectively work to ensure that we have, so with the membership committee, and we talked about what are the requirements for volunteerism and stuff like that. That is what they will, one, help create, but then two, help make sure it's being enforced. Now, this position does include, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about it now, a slight caveat in that the Director of Alumni Affairs will serve as the chair of this committee now, of the committee. I will not be the Vice President of Finance, of Membership. You will vote in that person. This is why this may change also, so keep that in mind, this may change. Currently, the university maintains a complete database of all alumni. Currently, the UDCNAS does not have access to that database. What we are doing is two things. One, as chair, my only responsibility will be to maintain membership records. So I will be making sure that the membership list is not just given back to you and posted online and things like that, but that it is maintained in the university database. For privacy reasons, we cannot give that information to you because we automatically get it, okay? So we can't give it to you now. We will have confidentiality statements and things like that written so that obviously the board of directors and then also the vice president of membership will have access. But beyond that, members would have to request a list and you would only be given a list of names. Just because for privacy reasons, again, we cannot just simply blanket share that with everyone. But for, cases when we need to do mailings and things like that, obviously we would have access to that information. It would also just be ensuring that attendance is tracked and checked because that will also go into the database. So things like that. Now, as the organization grows, we will revisit looking at giving access to that database. But for right now, there's some internal pushback because it is actually, it's truly the foundation's website, or it's truly the foundation's database. And so we just want to ensure that we maintain privacy so that the organization does consistently have accurate records. But again, that's not to say that forever and always I will serve in that role, and I will always report to someone that has been elected by the society. So if there are ever any changes, and if the board of directors sees fit to make a change to that even, we will do it, okay? The very last position is the Vice President of Marketing and Events. And this, again, this is fairly straightforward. This person will be responsible for helping to plan and market not just the organization, but also the organization's events. And that's because a part of it is not just marketing what event we have coming up, but a part of it is just really pushing out that the organization is here, this is what we do, this is how we can help you, this is why you should join. So obviously there will be a lot of, cross work together. Obviously membership will work very closely with finance to ensure that membership dues are being paid. They'll obviously work very closely with marketing to ensure that we're getting our name out there and that folks know who we are. Any questions about this? Yes?
Did you refer to a model from other universities to determine whether or not your position to be that chairman or that model, or how did you come to that conclusion?
So a number of other organizations build their own list. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So the question was, in making the decision to have that position as the chair of membership, did we look at a model from other organizations? And to answer that question, yes, we did. So 2 things happened. One, a number of other organizations create their own lists, so they would not be looking at the university necessarily to provide the list. Other organizations do just simply get a list from the university. But there's also a lot of organizations out there that it just gets sticky because their alumni associations are under the university 100% and that they're separate 501c3. And this alumni association, or excuse me, alumni society is a separate 501c3. So we did kind of take a mishmash of what we saw. And just to name a few, we looked at bylaws for Bowie's Alumni Association, Morgan State's Alumni Association, Howard's Alumni Association, Duke University's Alumni Association, the University of Pittsburgh Alumni Association. I'm not seeing Bernard right now in the room, but I know I'm missing about 6 others. So I mean, we really did a lot of research to make sure that we were on par. We also looked at a couple of organizations that are not alumni associations, and that's just to give you guys kind of some guidelines as to kind of where some of this has come from. And so we looked at a number of fraternities and sororities that I was able to find. We looked at even just some other nonprofits because we wanted to make sure that we were doing things that made sense. Another reason too, just to very quickly understand why we're going through this process now is because the last time the organization's bylaws were updated is when they were written, in 2002. Since then, there have been efforts to update the bylaws, but they were never pushed through. And so this has been kind of a large effort to say that this is really, really necessary. Not just because we're outside of new DC code, but because, as has been told to us by our attorneys, and something that we'll later kind of talk to the board of directors about, is putting together a process by which to review the bylaws roughly every 5 years. Maybe 10, but about every 5 years. And that's just because, again, the DC code changes. And so you need to consistently make sure that if nothing else, you're up to code. But then in addition to that, so just make sure that you're looking at what are new trends with alumni associations, you know, what are new people doing and how does that potentially impact our bylaws, or just after a few years, what just doesn't make sense anymore. And so again, that's kind of why we're also here in this process now. So, did I answer your question fully? Okay. And again, it is addressed in the bylaws, so if there are comments, concerns, you know, please do address it. But we also ask when you address it, just make sure that you're offering potential solutions and other ways of going about it, because I know a number of you belong to other organizations, you're alum also of other universities, and so you may have ideas on how to handle things like that that maybe we just didn't consider or think of. Meetings. This is also just a slight change. Board of Director meetings, one of the things that we're going to be instituting is a training. So there will kind of be a changeover of the guard, and so there will be a training provided to Board of Directors as well as all officers that are elected in. One of the things that the Office of Alumni Affairs is going to be doing is we are going to be establishing a membership with BoardSource, and then all Board of Directors and officers will be certified by BoardSource. So that's something that I'm going to commit my office to doing. I think it's very, very important. What is BoardSource? BoardSource is an organization that quite literally trains you on how to be a board of director. But they also periodically offer additional trainings on governance, on finances. You know, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you engage your members? So that's something that would be actively open to all of our officers. Considering what some of the topics may be, we may also open it up just to members if they're interested, but all of our board of directors and voted in officers would go through and be certified by BoardSource. So that's something that I'm committed to doing just because I think that sort of professional development is really, really important. Regular meetings. So this is also going to be a big change. How many of you are used to meeting monthly with the Alumni Association? We're not going to meet monthly anymore. Again, in an effort to push committee work and really have you actively engaged instead of just coming and like listening to us talk to you all the time, we're going to move away from these large general body meetings, and we're only going to do these quarterly. And so they're going to start to function much more as updates. So what work is going on, what's going on at the university, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to push to committee meetings so that there, let's say you're really, really interested in finance, or let's say you're really, really interested in the events, then your interests are much better aligned, and now potentially monthly or bi-monthly, those are the meetings that you're going to, instead of coming to this meeting every month. Another thing that we're required by law, as you'll see there, is an annual business meeting. That is required by law to have a formal annual business meeting. That will take place in April, and that's just because that is when we will host elections. So we'll also have a move to the only time we're ever voting on anything is in April, or at a special meeting. So we're going to try to also kind of move away from, so then too, in knowing that we're live casting all of our meetings in an effort to get more and more alum engaged, we will not be having votes on things at every single meeting, or sort of, I don't want to say haphazardly, because that's a poor way of describing it, but just kind of, oh, we need to vote on this today. And it'll be much more reserved for the committee. So for example, if the committee wants to do an event, it's not necessarily a whole organization vote. That committee will decide that they're going to do this event and when they're going to do this event, and then they'll just come and deliver that information. Did you have a question? So yes, so the annual meeting is in April, but this year, April the 1st, falls on a Monday. So March the 30th, so yeah, if you're present, sorry folks online, you will get this by email later. But on your calendar of events, it says March the 30th, and that's just because April the 1st fell on a Monday, and so we just bumped it back instead of waiting to the following weekend. Any other questions about that? All right, again, committee meetings and then special meetings. This is more than anything just kind of an explanation of who can call those meetings, how are they called, etc. Are there any questions about meetings? No, okay. So, attendance. The first thing I am going to address is the 100-mile rule. This is something that I'm absolutely open to changing. This is something that I actually did bring over from working on a past board where the great majority of our members did not live locally, and so we opted, because we also met quarterly, a 100-mile radius rule that said you would absolutely have an option to call in or participate virtually in that meeting. Again, it was an opportunity to just simply make sure that folks who physically cannot be here, so let's say we elect a board of director potentially, and that person maybe lives in California, and they're engaged on the phone every single day. I mean, they're sending us thousands of dollars, because I know you're out there somewhere, person. But they're very, very engaged, but they just cannot physically be here because potentially cost of flights and things like that. We want to offer them the opportunity to obviously be engaged. Now, I do also understand that a lot of folks, because trust me, there was a lot of concern initially expressed to me about this rule as folks who maybe live like in Baltimore. And that isn't 100 miles, but here in the District of Columbia, it can still take you 3 hours to get from here to Baltimore. And so considering that, so that's just kind of an explanation for where that came from, because I know that that's something very, very different. Means of member attendance, again, the board of directors retains the authority to determine whether participation by phone, by video, or other means shall constitute attendance. So again, that's just clearly addressing the board of directors and their ability to say, yes, this counts. One of the things that we are going to be working on is ensuring that if the board of directors says yes to that, that we can accurately capture who's watching us online. So some of you have potentially watched this via YouTube. We're moving to doing it on YouTube. I said YouTube, excuse me. Have watched this on Facebook Live. We're moving to YouTube now. So there is a link on Facebook, but the reason we wanted to open it on YouTube is because if you don't have a Facebook page, you couldn't watch the meetings. Anyone can log in and watch us on YouTube, so that's why. So we just want to make sure that we can capture those folks if we're going to say that that does count as being in attendance. Means of director attendance. Directors may attend board of director meetings by phone or virtual means unless the board of directors determines differently from time to time. So the way this was originally written, and then it got changed up a little bit for this explanation, was basically saying that the board of directors will vote amongst themselves on how they'll conduct meetings. Committee meetings will be handled kind of the same way as well. So if you're ever concerned about, oh gosh, you know, my committee always meets on Thursday nights and I have such and such going on Thursday night, I can't physically be there. It would kind of go back to that committee to make a decision that we're good if you just phone in for part of the meeting, etc. Okay? Any questions on attendance? No? Okay, voting and tenure. Again, I'm going to move through this fairly quickly. This is not in its entirety what is in the bylaw, so I encourage you to make sure that you're going through and reading this section thoroughly. But it does discuss what a quorum is. It does discuss how we will have voting. It does discuss proxy voting, and this is where we're going to come back to the board of directors and again determine a very, very specific process. Because again, as we think about members who may not physically be able to be here, and also members who may not have computer access, we want to ensure that if you are maintaining your voting privileges, that you do have a way and an opportunity to vote. So again, you know, it's easy to say, oh, well, we can just do a proxy vote by email. Well, if you don't have a computer, then that might not be possible. So we want to make sure that we're accommodating there. Now, I will say for this upcoming election, we will more than likely have paper ballots, and we will ask that you come in person, and we will also offer an opportunity to vote electronically. So the Oversight Committee currently will be looking at what are potentially all the different ways that we can offer voting in lieu of having a board of directors, because we'll be electing them, to come up with the official process. Also, our nominations committee will be working on that process. So, actually I said the oversight committee, it's not going to be oversight, it's going to be nominations. That will be coming up with that process on how we'll make sure that everyone has an opportunity to vote. Tenure, again, I already mentioned this. The biggest thing there is that we have changed from 4-year terms to 2-year terms with the option to serve consecutively. Yes, you had a question?
I was looking at quorum and down under membership, so I assume this is for membership. And it says 2/3 of the total members eligible to vote in the organization as of the record date. So 2/3 of whether you consider total members.
So what we're considering. So, yes, so the question was addressing the fact that it says a 2/3 vote of, a quorum requires a 2/3 vote. So, yes, so that is something that we tried to address in what was a 5-hour meeting with our attorneys. It was painful, I promise. That's what we're kind of trying to figure out, is because we have to have a quorum in order to do a vote. But that's where we get the weird loophole of, but if people aren't physically able to be here, then how do we accommodate? And virtual is exactly how we're trying to accommodate. That's where we have to make sure that we're able to capture who you are. But that's where we also start to get into the issue of, well, we do have a portion of membership that physically cannot be here. So, you know, trying to figure out how do you make accommodations, how do we not break the law, and then how do we ensure that the majority of our membership is comfortable and happy with what we're doing.
Trying to avoid mail out?
Yes, we're trying to avoid mail outs. I'm going to tell you why we're trying to avoid mail outs, and this is to address any and all concerns regarding mail. It is extremely expensive. It is extremely expensive to do mail out. So one of the things that we're going to be discussing, for example, I will tell you now for the Board of Trustee election is, you will have to notify us if you want a paper ballot for that election. Otherwise, it will be done electronically, because it can cost, let's say we have 500 members, it can cost $2,000 to $3,000 to mail to them ballots. It just gets very, very expensive. And unfortunately, the society and even my office does not have a budget to consistently cover those types of costs. So when we talk about mail, and I know it's something that has been brought to my attention like we used to do, unfortunately, to be frank, the money just isn't there to do it. If there's anyone in in this room that would like to volunteer to pay for it, absolutely. And then we will absolutely mail out every single person a ballot. But that is an issue, and it's something that we're very quickly trying to address. And that's why I said we're gonna try to figure out what are all the different ways, and then once our board of directors is voted in, they will come up with, when we say a vote by proxy, and that may be a slight change, to have a very, very specific, yes, if you virtually watch us, we will count that as a vote, so if it's, hey, I'll host a meeting at my house, and then everyone can maybe get to my house, and as long as we can figure out and have some sort of log of some kind, and we can count you as having attended the meeting, so we have a quorum, and then you would conduct your vote online. But again, it just starts to get so into the weeds, and we know that we have to have this election in March. So for that, we're absolutely going to have paper ballots, and we're absolutely going to have an online option as well. But that quorum piece is where we have to, but it's something that's required. We can't just simply say that, well, whoever is present in the room is a quorum, because if we've got 500 members, this is nowhere near a quorum of almost any kind. And and it also starts to feel a bit unfair if you only let the people who show up in the room vote, because that isn't representative of your membership. So again, it's something that we are very quickly trying to address. So again, definitely, please, we want some solutions for that one. Any other questions on voting? No? All right, guys, you're almost done. Committees, please, those are some very lengthy descriptions of the committees. I strongly encourage you to read through them on your own, especially if you're interested in one of those committees and you have questions or you think that we should be addressing anything there. But the section was entirely too long, so I'm just not going to go over it here. Are there any, I'll give you a second though, are there any pressing questions about committees? And yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know that you have representation on the Board of Trustees. So do you have a committee, or is that going to be a function of the executive committee to work with those representatives to make certain they're representing your interests on Board of Trustees?
So the question was, knowing that there is alumni representation on the Board of Trustees, will there be anything to ensure that those folks are representing the interests of alumni? This is a bit of an interesting topic because to be a Board of Trustee member, you do not have to belong to the society. That is not a requirement. Any alum, anyone, member or not, of this organization can run and be elected as a Board of Trustee member. Now, the one caveat there is the only people allowed to run and the only people allowed to vote are folks who actually obtained degrees from the university. Nope, it's not required.
Is that in the municipal regulation, or where
Nope,
is that?
it is not in the municipal regulation, that's why it's not required.
No, but
What is in there is that's who is eligible to run and eligible to vote, is folks who have obtained a degree from the university.
And I think one of the things that I think that we looked at that clarified that is what if the UDC National Alumni Society wasn't the organization that UDC actually chose to work with? What if it was the UDC National Alumni Association again, or some other organization? Then they all would have these ties to the board, so that's why it's really separate. Because if this organization becomes defunct, then how do you get to the representation to the board, which we are right now? So
and
that-
defunct
it
necessarily.
seems like if you have any organization that's recognized under the city or the university, it should, a member, the person should be a member of one of those organizations. I don't know how they become representatives.
Well,
because that's where, and that's something that we're going to continue to have open conversation with, is because now that there is an office of alumni affairs, that is also the best way to explain it, and I'm going to come to you because I know that you do have a question, is the Office of Alumni Affairs represents every single alum of the university, member of the organization or not. The Alumni Society represents its membership because it is a membership-based organization and it is a separate organization from the university. Now, what you're saying though does make sense. As a separate organization here to represent alum, it would make sense that there would be some level of input at that trustee level. That is something, that is an ongoing conversation that will have to be had with the university because right now there is nothing to require it. There's nothing to require it.
But it is it's a large body of alumni. So all of them in the past have come to the association for support for them running for the position. And a lot of them have then become members, say, I'm a member of the society. So it's kind of, I mean, it's not a checks and balances, but it should be a place for them to come to report to the body to say what they are doing as alumni. We should be able to ask them on a regular basis to do a report to say, no.
So historically, they were given one free year. After that, they would have to pay dues and join like everyone else. And so, and that's what we talked about right now. No, because the information comes to the Office of Alumni Affairs. It doesn't, that information is owned by the university. So we can give you a list, but that's how it would have to work, is you would have to come to the university and request a list. Because again, that's the big difference here, is that this organization is a separate 501c3. You are not firmly under the university. So you're coming to the university as essentially you're no different than if Giant across the street as a totally separate organization came over and said, hey, can we have a list of your alumni?
I understand that, but I don't understand is if a person is given 1 year membership, they are a member of that organization that year. You should have the records of all of those people.
Well, and that's something that we address is currently right now we have a major issue with membership lists, and that we're having to go back and rebuild them essentially. But that's something that we so yes, sir, because you've been raising your hand.
I got here a little late, so I think you may have already covered some of my questions. But one of the unique things about UDC is that we have 3 predecessor institutions, opposed to most universities have 1. The data are not as accurate as you said, as you can go back and archive and keep. I know that I've been getting some requests online about verifying information, etc. So I think you're moving in the right direction. Now that we have established some bylaws, and I guess it's like a preliminary constitution bylaws, will that mean that we can begin to collect dues, we begin to do fundraising like these paraphernalia? Let's say if we had the teacher or let's say the UDC Alumni Association, and it's so much in the catalog of online, and then maybe even do scholarships for students or what have you.
Yes.
So we're now a non-profit entity. We also have to be a tax account in the names. Now, where do we go from here? The elections, we said, will be held March 30th?
Yes.
And so that would be for fiscal year 2019.
No, that would be because you were late, unfortunately, I'm going to ask you to table all of your questions. Yes, so, and we'll talk after the meeting, and so that I can kind of go through that. But just to get us back on your question and kind of a concern as well, is that is part of why I started the conversation to say one of the things that we're going to be talking about is addressing some of the things within the DCMR. Because again, it isn't required, but it is something that does kind of make sense, that you would think that your alumni association or your alumni society at your university would have that level of influence and an opportunity within the overall university leadership. And again, here it is just not required. And so what that may look like, that becomes on the university side. So that's not something that this society can say, well, we think that this is what you should do. And that is essentially the only way that it would be presented. And then it is on the university to make the decision to make it a requirement.
So then it would seem to me that you either need a committee or you need to designate that the executive committee has some regular meetings with the alumni representatives on the board of trustees, because you have to have some input.
Yes. So what we do have in there is a board observer, and that is someone from the board of trustees that we would go to the board of trustees and ask them to be an observer within our meetings, because then that could potentially function as an opportunity with the board of directors to go to them and say, hey, these are our concerns. Now, one thing that I haven't addressed is also there is on the board of trustees an alumni task force. One of the things that we are going to be addressing is very, very specifically, because it has been historically that those 3 voted in alumni trustees were that alumni task force. And so one of the other things that we're going to be doing is very specifically addressing what does that task force do and what does that look like. Because historically it has been led by Jerome for what has been, how many years have you been on the board of trustees now, Jerome? 8 years. So it's been led by Jerome. Now, we have been very, very lucky as a society that Jerome is a member of the society and has been actively engaged with the society. And we want to maintain that. But we also want to ensure that with that task force moving forward, it's very clearly outlined in our ticket, because Jerome won't be there forever. So we want it very, very clear that when you come on as an alumni trustee, that means you also are a part of this alumni task force, and this is what the alumni task force does and is for. So that is hopefully a way that we will begin to address things like that. But again, and we do have to move on. I understand what you're saying, but that just becomes a much longer conversation and a much longer process, because that on the side of the university is also getting them to agree to do it.
I'm just saying somewhere in your bylaws, either in the executive committee or another committee.
And again, the reason why I say it's something is still to say that because we do have the executive committee, which is the board of directors and those officers, but to get to the trustees to come to that meeting or to host that type of meeting, that's still getting the university buy-in. You see what I'm saying? So you can create another committee that says board of trustee committee, but if they don't buy into it, then it's a committee that we have, but what does it do? You see what I'm saying?
But it's up to the society to make those rules. Once, I don't think we can govern everything right now. Those are things that we can address. I think, but it can be addressed as the body starts to perform and start to move. I think there should be, but if all 3 people on the board right now are members of society, all of them.
I'm just trying to figure out how you're going to tackle the university if you don't have votes. And somewhere you have to have something that says that you connect with.
And part of that will also be addressed with a memorandum of understanding between the university and the society. So that is one way in which it will absolutely be addressed. And one of the things too that I talked about in the very beginning with my alumni affairs update is that my office, once we vote in a board of directors, will begin working with that board of directors to develop, I have to develop a strategic plan for the Office of Alumni Affairs. I obviously strongly encourage the society to build its own strategic plan. So in meeting with the board of directors, it's going to be looking at to say, now how do we work together to make sure that we're catching it all? There obviously, when we start talking about commencement and things like that, which we're already beginning conversations to talk about that, is how does the society play into that? What does that look like? And that could fall under, marketing an event, that we're going to do an event with it for students. It could fall under finance and audit, which also includes fundraising, that we're going to work with the university to do a fundraiser of some kind. But I understand what very specific thing you're asking for. And again, what I would say for now is it's not that we aren't there, but it's coming back and talking to the university about what that looks like. Because just because we create a committee over here, if we don't have the buy-in on their side to flow into it, so, yes.
Yeah, so I was going to support the idea of I know that you talked about the MOU between, so you mentioned the MOU, which could spell out some very clear things that we agree on, because that would be an agreement. But also would say, submit that the new leadership, maybe that is something that they really could really focus on when they come in. That MOU, moving the organization forward, giving them a chance to lead and be able to create those relationships from the very beginning. So I agree with you that there has to be some kind of mechanism, but at this particular point, the leadership we may ask the leadership to be able to do that if they don't already do it.
So are you saying, I'm trying to clarify, that we won't be able to elect our representation for the board of directors of the university? Is that what you're saying?
Board of Trustees.
No, for the Board of Trustees,
Board of Trustees.
you have to have obtained a degree, and this is per the DC code.
Okay.
You have to have obtained a degree from the university in order to participate in that election. What does that mean? That means that I have already started a conversation with Ms. Tiffany Cooper in the registrar's office to not just pull a list of alumni, but to pull a list of who actually graduated. In November, when we launch that election process, so we got some time, we will host a very specific information session totally separate from the society to discuss that trustee election.
Can you also add that, because I know we talked about that every person who's a member of the Alumni Society may not be a graduate. Right?
Yes, and that's also very clear too. That is separate from the society. So as a member of the society, whether you obtain a degree or not, you can still join the society and you can still participate in the society election of board of directors. So that's why I said I want to table any further discussion on the board of trustees because that is totally separate from the society. You had a question?
It seems like you got a good skeleton and you start to begin to put more meat, more detail into this. So I think it's progressive.
Thank you.
Not an easy process.
Oh no.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
When are you taking volunteers for some of the committees?
That is a wonderful question. Someone wants to know, when will we be taking volunteers for these committees? That is going to start rolling out first online and over email, but we will officially begin recruitment now. So if you're interested in a committee, the minute that the application is available online, like I said, I'm hoping to have that up by Monday afternoon, there you will be asked to check what committee you might be interested in serving on. And from there, we're going to start pushing out more and more information on how you can join the committees, etc. The reason I say it's going to take just a little bit of time, though, and we are recruiting for it now, is because once we vote in a board of directors, then we will have our officer election. Officers can appoint chairs to their committees. So, for example, our oversight committee has asked Barrington Scott, who unfortunately is not here with us today, to lead what will be one of the society's first events in October. Well, not first events, because we've got quite a few on that upcoming event slide. But the first big event of the society, which will be in August. So he'll sort of be a temporary chair of that marketing and events committee to work on that event. And then by the time we get to the event, we would have a vice president of marketing events who would have by then nominated a chair. And then after that event, it would be that person who would do it. So if you're interested, say, in events, then, excuse me, I encourage you and I can help you connect with Mr. Scott so that as he's starting to work on planning that event, we can make sure that he's building his team. Does that make sense? All the rest of the committees, we will begin pushing out firmly at the election, because some of this policy stuff we want to go ahead and start working on, because we want to give the board of directors something to work from. As far as approving, etc. But we also wanted to give them an opportunity to come in and say, actually, we might prefer to sort of give you a template and then you can kind of fill in some of the specifics. But we do want to go ahead, again, on those membership applications, you will be able to elect what committee you might be interested in, and then more very specific information will kind of come after that, okay? Again, we're trying to start a process of, you guys aren't going to keep hearing from me, and that we're really trying to, as quickly as we possibly can, get it over to the leadership that you elect in, but we also don't want to continue to just kind of leave you hanging from month to month, like, okay, but I'm itching, I'm excited, I want to get more involved. Alrighty. So with that, I'm going to close out this bylaw revision. And I'm going to ask Mr. Shelton to come up here and talk about elections. As he makes his way, though, are there any other questions that I can answer right now? And I'm only going to take maybe 3. No? He's here, so I can't take questions.
My question was, when are we going to approve the bylaws? Because that was part of what I was volunteering for, was to get the bylaws approved and to conduct elections based on the bylaws. Okay. Now, I'm going to do a commercial first, and that way you won't have to have a commercial at the end. On February the 15th, there will be the Hall of Fame dinner, which is an alumni-supported activity for the last 7 years. Going into the hall will be alumni Donald Fugel, Lester Butler, William Chesley, Barrington Scott, and Anthony Cade. It starts at 6 o'clock. It's $100. We encourage all of our alumni to come. Also, it was normally attached to Founders Day, and on the following Thursday, which will be February the 21st, is Founders Day. That's the day when alumni come back to check on what the university is doing and make sure that the president and the university are going in the direction that they want to go. This week, President Mason spoke on HBCUdigest.com. It's an audio report of the direction of the university. Some of you may notice this building to my right. We've just acquired rights to use that as a build-out space for the university for a long period of time, supported by the city. Across the street at the Walgreens, we've gotten an option to use that area. We're in the process of renovating all of our air quality systems. A lot of good things are happening at your university, and you need to know about it. You can listen to the president again on HBCUdigest.com. Listen to President Ron Mason, and you'll be able to hear exactly what he said rather than what I'm trying to paraphrase. The election committee is going to now have a way to meet. We tried to meet, and we ran out of clock. So those of you that volunteered, I did not lose your name. I lost the timeline for when we would meet. So you'll be receiving a timeline to meet and a date to meet to carry out all of our election functions. Now, as I understand this, the nominations for the board of directors will be open on February 15th. Please think of who you would want to stand in the leadership and foundation of this organization. Those persons will be nominated, and we will conduct that election. The election will close on March 15th. It will be at 30 days. We have by law 30-day airings. A ballot will be finalized. No, the nominations for board of directors closes March the 15th. All of this will be published, and you'll be able to see it. The reason that I'm looking at my cell phone is because that's where it's published for me right now. And believe me, this is a new experience, especially having all of my brains in the cell phone. The ballot will be finalized for printing by the 22nd committee. Vote count will immediately follow on March the 30th, and it will be a physical vote count here on campus. A room will be identified Witnesses and people like that will be asked to sign up, but the committee will be responsible for counting votes, and we will have a process.
They'll probably be right next.
Yeah, one of the rooms, we have a number of rooms that we'll be able to use. It'll be announced. It won't be a secret. On April 1st, and the date is interesting, but we will announce the winners on April 1st.
I did that just in case on the 30th, just in case.
And we will give you till April the 10th if you have any challenges or competent questions as to the results of the election. After that, the vote will be for real, and we will begin to go forward. The board of directors will serve from April 15th to the following April 1st. On April 15th, nominations for officers were open. Nominations for officers will close on May 15th. The board of director interview of candidates will be May 20th to 24th. The ballot will be finalized. I'm sorry, I forgot. I was so intent on using my phone because it was new to me. I'm sorry. It will be finalized. I forgot where I was. Here we go. Thank you, whoever you are. You're a great friend. May 29th, the ballots will be finalized. And on June 1st, the vote for officers county meeting will follow. And we'll be doing the same kind of physical in-witness presence counting and documentation. On June 3rd, the results will be announced. On June 13th, the final day to contest the vote will occur. You all are invited to participate and to run for any of the seats that are available. Please make it known. Share with your friends and your classmates. Basically, I hope to see you all February the 15th at 6 o'clock at the alumni-sponsored activity. I started it as a board member for the university and for remembering who and where we were from. Again, thank you all for coming today. Anything else you want from me, folks? Questions? Okay.
I know. I'm sorry, I wasn't here. What are the qualifications for board
Alumni?
For the board of directors, so we are working on, and it will be available by Friday, a job description. But outside of the eligibility that's in your bylaws, there's no any additional special specific qualifications to run for board of directors. So we will be publishing specific job descriptions for all of them, but the eligibility, essentially some of it obviously may not be relevant right now. So for example, we ask that you come to so many meetings a year to sort of express the fact that you are committed to the organization, but that you have to be an active member of the organization in order to run for one of those positions. You have to be in good standing to run for one of those positions. And we did adopt in there that you have to have obtained a degree to run for one of those positions. So you have to have obtained a degree from the university. Is that not in there? Are you not finding it?
I was looking at the basic consideration.
Okay. But yes, but outside of that, there are no specific anything to run for a board of director position.
You know, you do have to have a petition by the old laws of the board.
Yeah.
They have to have a petition signed by graduates of the university. And I think the number was reduced to 25. Those are the old rules. You have to get that. For the trustee of the board of the University of the District of Columbia, that was a requirement. I wanted to say that when you all were discussing the history. So you are from the whole pool, not just from the NAS pool. And that's how you get to be a trustee at the university. And it is open to all graduates, not only the Alumni Society.
When do you obtain the form to be a
That will come from her office as soon as the timeline. The next election is in 2020.
And so all of that will be occurring at the end of my second term. So,
Again, we're going to table any discussion on the trustee elections because we do not want to confuse people. We're only discussing these elections. So currently, the only process to go onto the ballot for one of our officers is to simply be nominated. If you are nominated, you will go onto the ballot. For the board of directors, for this organization only, if you are nominated, you will go on the ballot. Now, the one caveat in there is that if I nominate Kalita, she will immediately, or I mean within maybe 5 days or so, receive an application. All that is her accepting the nomination. And it's going to ask just maybe a couple of questions like, why are you interested? What would you like to accomplish? Just so that we can get to know you a little bit. But no one will be excluded from the process. And as long as it is completed and returned, she'll go on the ballot. And that's simply because we want to make sure that someone who is nominated is obviously aware of their nomination, but accepts their nomination. We will likely let the nominator know if that person does not accept. So we want there to be confusion. You know, I nominated Kalita, and then I look at the form and I'm like, well, she's not up here, and I know I nominated her. We would tell you Kalita actually declined the nomination, and it would not be made public. It would only be back to the person who nominated her, so that that person was clear that she will not appear on the ballot for that reason.
Any member may nominate.
Any member may nominate, yes.
They can only nominate someone who is a graduate.
Yes, yes, yes. Is that clear? Yes, so any member can nominate anyone, but those nominees, we will verify that you did obtain a degree. So that would be the only reason why you might also come out, is if you did not obtain a degree, then you may not go onto the ballot. And again, you would be notified, and whomever nominated you would be notified as well.
So non-degree members would not be able to serve as officers or anything like that?
Right.
Oh,
Right. 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 The only one caveat is with the officer positions. Let's say again, for the vice president of audit, and that's why this election comes later, is because the board of directors will also make some of these decisions, is they may require some level of financial experience to run for vice president of finance. And so also, you know, if you nominated me, Lord, I have an English degree. I don't know that you want me doing your taxes. So for that reason, I could potentially not be able to run for that position. But that's also why there will be an interview process, is because they'll have to go through some level of explaining not just why they want the position, but what qualifications that they think they have to run it. And so again, that's because by law, technically the board of directors can appoint its officers. It does not have to go through an election. We felt that that was important, so we're adding in a board of director interview to be able to go on the ballot. So I would also encourage you strongly to take this board of directors vote very seriously, because these are the people who are in charge of the organization. I would also strongly encourage you, if you are interested in running for one of those positions, to take it very seriously. This is a major time commitment, and you need to know what you're getting into. You know, I always used to make the joke, I used to work with students, and I used to always tell them, don't do it just because it looks and sounds good. If you don't have the time to commit to it, if you don't have the knowledge you feel potentially, I don't want to discourage anyone, but I want you to understand that you are now running a nonprofit organization, and this needs to be taken very, very serious. This first election is a very, very big deal to this organization, because this is who you are voting in to manage you as an organization. All right,
How long after the elections may final and know who the officers will be the board score?
Yes, board source.
Board score, I'm sorry.
Yes.
How long after that process will the officers, board members have the workshop? Because we want to make sure, even though we think we've gotten the best qualified people for the positions, that they understand what it is.
Absolutely. So, per the bylaws, it actually says that there is a training in July. So at the latest, that training would happen in July. Now, obviously, and that's also because the officers don't get voted in until July the 5th, or June the 15th. So we wanted to kind of have that after the fact. But that board source training could come, you know, at the end of June, etc. But in July, there will be a training. One of the other things we're going to look at doing with the training, and this is just something that I'm going to encourage, we are a Strength Finders University. If anyone does not know what that is a partnership with Gallup Foundation to go through and do training to help you find what are your strengths. So we're also going to I'm going to be encouraging the board of directors to also, because we have folks on campus who can do that training, to include that as well. And then also potentially looking at offering the opportunity for those people who get the Strength Finders training to become Strength Finders also certified. So those are two things that we're also, or excuse me, that's a second thing that we're also considering. But that again, that requires a couple of additional, we can definitely do the training, but the certification piece, that takes a little bit more. So we're going to be considering that though as well for the board.
Have you also reached out to the SCORE, the Service Corps retired executives? They're part of the Small Business Administration here in DC. They have a lot of
SCORE, yes,
SCORE.
I do know SCORE.
Yeah.
Yes. So he mentioned if we've looked at SCORE, SCORE does do a number of workshops and things like that, different trainings for just individuals. So that's absolutely something that we can consider and look at what are some of those SCORE trainings that may be appropriate. We're also going to be looking at CASE and academic impressions. Those are two additional professional development opportunities that I have working in university advancement. So we're going to be looking at what are some of the conferences and things like that that may make sense. So for example, CASE District 2 typically does their annual conference. Last year it was at the National Harbor. This year it's going to be in Philadelphia. So it's typically not that far away. So that's something that I also maybe can encouraging, if nothing else, the board of directors and the officers to strongly attend, especially because it comes in such close proximity. And we'll begin to kind of look at it and say, okay, well, what are the costs? Because it's around $500 per person. So it's not ridiculously expensive, but perhaps my office can step in and say, okay, we'll help pay for that, or we'll split the cost between the board, or, you know, between me, myself, and the organization to say that we'll help cover some of those costs. But one of the biggest things definitely is that we want to ensure that we're consistently training you so that you know, not just you know what you're doing, but you know what you're doing. And that you're up on what are trends, what's popular, because it's very easy for us to sit in this room and kind of decide and think like, oh yeah, we should do this and we should do that. But we want to know what we do. It's worthwhile knowing what everyone else is doing and what's on trend and what are new and popular ways, or what are new ways of connecting with alum. So training is going to be a big new thing, because I love professional development.
For me, one of the most important things in that training is that we all understand we are non-profit and we are non-made. So yeah, the concept of bosses and subordinates has to be very much understood.
Yes. I like that. And accountability with volunteers. Definitely accountability. All right, so last thing, guys, to kind of close us out today. This is a list of upcoming events. Obviously, it is not exhaustive. You were given at the beginning or on the tables just a small sheet of a couple of upcoming events. This includes a few additional things. So for example, you'll see on the 21st, in addition to Founders Day, we will also have the Center for Diversity, Inclusion, and Multicultural Affairs will be hosting their grand opening at 5:30 p.m. They are led by Miss Trinice McNally. She is amazing. In addition to that, we will have a Learn About Elections networking event. So again, this will just be a second opportunity for the nominations committee to kind of walk you back through what that process looks like. It is on the 21st, so it falls just after when nominations will actually open. But we felt like it might be important to just have a meeting to discuss elections, period. We're going to begin, and the reason why it says networking event is because we're going to begin to look at some off-campus locations. And some opportunities for us to just kind of get together and hang out a little bit more. We're also hoping that this will begin to help pull in some of our younger alum, perhaps. Also, February the 23rd, HBC Unite with the Washington Wizards. This is a partnership with the DC HBCU Alliance. If you are unfamiliar with that organization, it is a collective of HBCU alumni associations here in the DC area. Mr. Grayson is one of their board members, and so they come together with all of those HBCUs and do different events. And so this is one of the events. The tickets are $26. You can use that link there to buy them. I will tell you too, probably on or about February the 5th, we're going to be launching a little competition online for you to sing the alma mater. Anyone singing the alma mater and submitting a video to us will be entered in to win a family 4-pack of those tickets. So we're going to start having some engagement, a little fun with this. So you've got to submit a video to participate, and then we're going to post some of our favorites. So I can't wait to hear some of y'all sing, right? Again, up there, just a reminder that nominations for the Board of Directors will close on March the 15th. We will have a tentative Meet the Nominees night. Again, this is an opportunity. We want you to know who it is that you're voting on. So this will be an opportunity for them to kind of introduce themselves. Anyone who is nominated for the Board of Directors will be notified and given this date as a placeholder. Obviously, it is not required, but we would encourage you to come because we're going to be inviting all of our members, etc. This will also be an opportunity there to fill out applications because, again, that will be the last day that you can join the organization prior to the vote. Again, remember, that's just prior to the vote. Applications will continue to be accepted, but you will not be able to vote if you don't join by that date.
Is that for the board? Is that for the other elections?
This will just be for the board. So the question was, will this be for folks running for other positions? No, this will just be for the board. We will look at doing a second one for those officer positions in May, once those nominations close. So we'll look at that date as a second one in May, because again, we want to make sure that we're clear on who's going to be on this ballot and who we're electing, okay? And then lastly is March the 30th. This is our annual business meeting / Board of Directors elections. And I apologize, it should also say / bylaw vote. So please be reminded that on that ballot will be the bylaws approval. Okay, so it'll just be, do you approve these bylaws, yes or no? And now, yes?
You presented several other events. Where can you see those?
On the UDC calendar. The only ones that will not be on the UDC calendar are the dates in which the nominees open and close. All the rest, so this nominations for Board of Directors, that won't be on the university's calendar, but the rest of the events will be.
What about the ones that have the calendar events on the PowerPoint? Is it possible we can get access to the PowerPoint?
Yes, the PowerPoint will go up on the alumni website. It will be there so you can go back and access that later on. Any other questions? Okay, hold one second. Any questions? No? Okay, well then you have an announcement?
My name is Arlene Kingberry, lifetime member of the association. I'm a chair of the faculty senate and a professor of special education at the university. I just wanted to bring to your attention the death of one of our alumni, a young man, 25 years of age. He was a special education major, undergraduate, and he was so excited about teaching. He said his parents wanted him to be a doctor, but he wanted to be a special education teacher. Very bright young man. And he was teaching at a Senn Middle School in Brooklyn, New York. He had cancer. I didn't even know that he passed. I just talked to him not too long ago. And the William Watkins Senior Educational Institute created a scholarship in his name. And someone just emailed it to me because they know I'm a special education professor. So I would like to start a scholarship here at UDC in his name. And I don't know how to do that through the Alumni Association, but those of you who would like to support him in this manner, I guess we'll work out something about that. Yeah, but I mean, just began teaching. Life is cut off like that.
Thank for letting us know that. We extend and express sympathies and condolences to that family. Anything else? No? Well, very quickly, I'm going to show you all. So this is never before seen. So I'm really excited. You guys are some of the first to see it outside of like our marketing department. And I lied and said I wasn't going to show it. I'm sure. No, I'm joking. I did get permission. So one of the things that we're going to be launching in addition with the Equity Imperative sort of 2.0 campaign is a campaign called UDC First Choice. We want to start letting folks know in this community, UDC is not a last choice. It is not a, oh my God, I flunked out of Hampton or Howard and had to come to UDC. UDC was my first choice. This is also taking off of Mayor Bowser's during her inaugural speech. She made a comment about UDC being the first choice. So with that, I'm going to show you, this will be a commercial that we will begin showing. I'm not 1,000% sure. But it will be out there. I know that I do now see commercials for us on Instagram, actually, which I was so excited about. Technology works when it works. I do always giggle at a couple of mine doing the smart boards in the classrooms. They are not easy to use. So we are going big places, y'all.
It's the voucher system. If she commits to that, she needs to be paying how the children are going out of town. We don't get that funding here from the district. And I'd like you all to know that. We do not get that. So first choice needs money as well. All right.
All right, with that, guys, thank you for sticking with us. I know this has been a long meeting. I thank everyone online. We're going to sign off now. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, as always, please do not hesitate to contact me. I am also in Building 39, right next door on the 3rd floor in room 301I. If you ever want to stop by and see me, please come by and visit. I hope to see you at Founders Day. I also hope to see you at some of the other events that will be going on that evening and afternoon.